Hi, welcome to the Optimising Your Brilliance podcast, where we get to the source of what makes people brilliant and explore how to eradicate the barriers that stop you from shining. By shining, I mean being at your absolute best in both work and life. You'll hear from business and thought leaders who bear all and share their insider secrets, along with my episodes focused on optimizing your performance, productivity, success, and well-being. My name is Estelle Reid, founder of Be, executive coach, speaker, and best-selling author of Inner Brilliance, Out to Shine, 10 Antidotes to Imposter Syndrome, Workaholism, and Stress. So, if you're ready to take your work life to the next level, let's begin. Hello, can you do me a favour? Would you mind either liking or subscribing wherever it is that you listen? So maybe that's on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, because that will help us to keep going and keep growing. The other thing that will be really helpful is if you could share it with someone that would also benefit from the content. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Right, let's get on. So welcome everyone. So last episode, we covered part one of this series and we focused on the hidden ceiling, keeping your goals out of reach, the top 5 self-sabotage mistakes. So if you missed that episode, I can highly recommend going back, listening to that first before you listen to part 2 of this series. And part 2 is focused on your transformation for 2026. And I'm going to be sharing with you my 5-step clear framework, which will help you prevent self-sabotage and accelerate your goal achievement. I have been thinking about you, your year, and what you want, because let's face it, sometimes we get to the end of a year and we think, what was all that about? What did I achieve? What didn't I achieve? And so with that in mind, I've been doing some research around why we self-sabotage, how we self-sabotage. And then I have designed a process over the last couple of years that's the counter to all of that. So in this episode, it's just me. The topic is how to stop self-sabotage and achieve your goals in 2026. So if this is you, then you're absolutely in the right place for this podcast. So maybe you have a bold goal, something that you're really determined to achieve. What is it that you're measuring? Where is it that you're heading towards? Being clear about that and then taking consistent effort. We're going to look at how we break through those ceilings, because I don't know about you, do you ever, when you're trying to achieve something, sometimes you might bang your head on a level of performance and you get stuck and you think, well, you know, how do I take things to the next level? So we'll be looking at that. But, you know, you can listen to this episode either for yourself to set your goals for 2026, or maybe if you're in HR, because I work with a lot of HR professionals, in the legal industry, if you're a head of a department or a leader, you can use this process also to think about your departmental, your business goals as well. So you're absolutely in the right place if that sounds like you. So here's what's coming up. Everything that I'm sharing with you is based on science. So I've done the scientific research and this is what the science tells us. As I say, this is when we start to reach this ceiling. Thinking about your 2026 transformation. So I'll share with you my 5-step clear framework, which will prevent that self-sabotage. So the framework has been designed to design out that self-sabotage so that you accelerate your goals and you achieve what it is that you set out to achieve. So sometimes I get a bit of a reputation with my clients for being a taskmaster. And that's because as a coach, the definition of insanity is keep doing what you're doing and expect a different result. But that's the reality, isn't it? We can sit and we can wait and hope that things will change, or we can choose to do things differently. And so today is about choosing to do things differently. I'll give you a route map so that you can plan that out for 2026. So take time for you, grab a cuppa, a pen, maybe you got a new journal for Christmas, a new pad. And then there'll be times when I'm going to ask you questions. So press pause, really think about the answers to those questions, because within there, so when a coach asks you deep searching questions, what we're doing is what's referred to as a trans-derivational search. We're tapping into your unconscious mind, which is your storehouse of past experiences, memories, emotions, your values, your beliefs, what you really think. So if your immediate response is, I don't know, then that means the question is just ricocheted off and you've not allowed yourself to think deeply. So I would encourage you to think deeply. And if you want some inspiration for the kinds of things that you might want to achieve, here are some examples. So take, for example, one lawyer, to be honest, they were at risk of dismissal. They weren't bringing in enough fee income. They increased the fee income by 300%. In another business, they were in a sticky spot because the industry was changing, the market conditions were challenging, and some of their methodologies had become staid and old-fashioned. So working out a strategic plan, a goal of goals, vision, getting the team behind that, they were able to go from 120 million to 140 million pounds, and that was in a downturn market. Then another coachee, for them, they had been putting off a conversation. So sometimes when we self-sabotage the thing that we want to achieve because we've got inner fears, and part of this process is letting go of those fears. And sometimes those fears make us behave irrationally, because even though we know there are consequences, so take this client, the consequence of not having that difficult conversation, of letting that fear get in the way, was that it was costing the business £1 million a year. But literally, once we got rid of that fear, he went off and he had that conversation just like that. It was dead easy. Maybe it is that you want to be able to have difficult conversations with people, or like, for example, in another team that I'm working with, they've had a big push on holding team members accountable, but also having those difficult conversations. And it's been amazing how they've been able to push performance up. Some of the team members have been on cruise mode. And I think they're wondering what's hit them, like, oh my goodness, if I say I'm going to do something, then I've got to deliver it. So it's that kind of thing. And also, interestingly, so if having difficult conversations is a challenge for you, look at my last episode, which was published on Christmas Eve, and it's about having difficult conversations. I talk about how you give feedback. The reason I released it on Christmas Eve is I explained that the dynamics around the boardroom table, the meeting table, they're not dissimilar to the dynamics around the family Christmas table. Go and look that episode up if that's you, because I shared a model in terms of how to handle those conversations, but also explain why others behave like that, but also how we behave like that, and shared all sorts again of scientific models to help you make sense of it. Another example here, we've got a CEO, acting CEO, taken over an organisation, and they really left it in good shape by the time they exited that role, and they took their organisation from a £279,000 loss to a £250,000 profit. So again, if that's your business, if you've got some stretching targets that maybe you need to work on, this process will be useful for you. Or maybe it's about you just feeling comfortable in your own skin, not feeling like an imposter, being able to step out of your comfort zone to do and achieve some exciting things. Moving on to this process, how you can use it. This is the clear framework to optimize leadership. So CLEAR is an acronym, get my teeth in. So each letter stands for something. So the first step in the process, and I'm going to get under the surface of how you can do this for yourself when it comes to your New Year goals, resolutions, so that you make sure that you achieve them. And the first thing is you've got to get clear on where it is that you want to head. So remember me saying my vision, what I'm working towards is less time, but for more people, which guides my strategic plan and my goals. So the next letter in the acronym is let go. So it's about letting go of those identity threats. So do you remember me talking about, somebody gave me feedback on my very first chapter of my book, and it made me feel, I allowed it to make me feel not good enough. So I had to get over that. I had to feel enough in order to move forward and write my book. Then we've got to have sufficient energy to sustain the journey. So the E in the CLEAR model stands for Energise. And this is about getting rid of energy leaks, plugging those energy leaks, optimizing energy so that you stay motivated to move forward. Then it's back to you've got to take aligned action. It's no good waiting and hoping, getting to the end of 2026 and thinking, well, nothing's different. And that'll be because either you've not changed your habits, your behaviors, you've not taken consistent action towards that goal or vision. And then the final bit, which when I was doing my research, I guess I undersold a little bit. So R stands for rise, and it's about rising to the next level, but it's the all-important review, refine, and recognize. So review what you've achieved so far. It's worth doing that for this year. So as you close out 2025 and you review what it is that you've achieved, what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well. So we review, we recognize, we take on board, like I've celebrated this week. One, the results in my podcast. Thank you again. And then two, one goal, which is top secret. I can't announce it, but one goal that I've been working on all year and I'm nearly there. And I heard some really positive news on it the other day. So I celebrated that. So recognize and then rise. So the rise element is we have to keep, so I gave the example of where I've slipped back is in relation to our fitness. So in order to stay at a level, if we want to move to the next level, but consistently stay at the next level, we've got to lock in those habits and behaviors. So it's for us, as I say, it's making sure that we stick to our walking routine. Right, so before we even get under the surface of the CLEAR model, the first thing, so this is where it might be time to get your pad and pen out again and to reflect, and to think about your identity, so who you are as a person, because what got you here won't necessarily get you there, as in get you towards your vision or BHAG. So when you think about where you want to go next year, it's first of all reflecting on, so I call this the identity pyramid assessment. So if you're just listening at it, that's a good one. If you're listening to it, not looking or watching this on YouTube, you'll see that at the very base level, so at the bottom of the triangle, we've got Number one, what's my purpose, mission, or my strong reason why? We've already covered that off earlier on. Number two, what are my values? What's important to me in relation to this goal? So do you remember me saying that the previous year I got off track? I went on this training program. It took me in a different direction. And all the time I felt uncomfortable. And that was because I was misaligned with my values. The next step up in that triangle is beliefs. We've got to make sure that our beliefs are aligned towards our vision. Do we believe that we can do this? And you know what? What's interesting, I was talking to a previous podcast guest, and Deborah Lyon, and she summarized it perfectly. And she said, do you know what? I don't think belief is possible without action. So sometimes we've just got to put our big girl boy pants on, take action, and then we go, oh, actually, I can do it. So feel the fear and do it anyway. Then next in the pyramid is energy. So what's my energy like? What's my state of mind like? Is it positive? Is it negative? Do I need to make some tweaks around that? Do I need to work on improving my state of mind, the way in which I talk to myself? And then the next part, so the next level up in the identity pyramid, is our habits and our behaviors. So there are certain things that will deliver our result. So with this podcast, so initially I thought, right, I'll just do bi-weekly podcast release. And then when I did my research, if my podcast is going to be a success, I have got to have regular publishing and interviewing routines. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing today. How on earth is my podcast going to rise up the podcast charts unless I adopt regular habits and behaviors? And then you'll see, or you won't see if you're listening, at the top of the pyramid is our single point of focus, which is our vision or our BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. So the purpose of the identity pyramid assessment is for you to go through each of those levels. I'll run through them very quickly again now, and then for you to identify what's working, but also what needs to change in order to achieve your vision. So number one, my strong reason why, purpose or mission. Number two, my values. Number three, my beliefs. Number four, my energy state, my state of mind, my energy and my state of mind. Number five, my habits and behaviors. And number six, my strengths. What am I naturally good at? So moving on, which levels require change in order for you to achieve your vision or goal? So this is what we did. I'm now going to run through how you can now get to that next level, achieve your goal, dream and ambition. So the first step, and this is the counter to that first self-sabotage pattern, is to get clear on your next level. So do you remember me saying that our original house search, it was too broad and it was delivering. So we'd gone 5 miles from the Lake District, which is why we ended up in Yorkshire and Lancashire. And we had a really broad budget as well, 400 to 550,000. And you'll see that that delivered 930 results. Our focus, well, we weren't focused. We ended up wasting all of that time. But then when we got really clear on the destination that we wanted to travel to, so what was our vision? So you'll see here at the altered search, between 550,000 and 800,000, and it also had to have 5 bedrooms, but it was also 5 miles from Windermere. So this is about being clear and tangible when it comes to your vision or to your goals. And you'll see that that only delivered 12 results. And in actual fact, if you're watching, this was the house that we bought. So these are your reflection points. So to get clear on your next level, number one, clarify or define and be specific about your next level. So what is the vision? What is the goal? Number two, design your next level map. So what that means is identifying how are you going to chart your way to that goal or ambition? What are all the things that you need to do? And then do what top performers do. So they visualize and mentally rehearse their desired outcome. So for me, that looks like I combine two habits in one. So as part of my well-being routine, we have a lazy spa. I sit under the stars, even in the winter, with my bobble hat on. I sit, I relax, and then I don't know whether you call it meditation or visualization, but I think about the goal, dream, and ambition, and I replay it over and over and over and over in my head. Right. So as you think about those three things that I mentioned, what are you going to do differently? Press pause, write down what you're going to do. So step 2 in the clear process is to let go of your identity threats. Do you remember me saying that somebody wrote something about my very first chapter in my book back in 2009? And even when I submitted my manuscript to my publisher, it's really great, the publishing system. You can see exactly what they think of you. And this is what the publisher said. It's a decent read. It fits in well with our business books imprint. However, it does not read like a bestseller. So as a first-time author, that could have put me off. But I didn't let it. I made sure I had a vision. I wanted it to become a bestseller, but I had a really clear plan. And I worked tirelessly towards achieving that plan and achieved things that were really beyond what I expected. You know, having a book launch in Waterstones, that was a really pinch me moment. And then being invited to speak at the Derby Book Festival, following in the footsteps of amazing people like the CEO of Timpson's, the guy that wrote The Chimp Paradox, and a gold medalist. And I was still thinking, what's little old Estelle Reed from Ashby de la Zouch, as it was at the time, doing here? But I embraced it, I've acknowledged it, and that's who I am now, a best-selling author. Hark at me. So here's your next steps to let go of your identity threats. You can cheat change and you can use techniques such as havening or EFT to clear those limiting beliefs. And that's what I do with my clients. That's what I do on the Clear program. It's also what I do on my Shine program, which is about imposter syndrome. So we cheat change, and then the behavior is just automatic. So it's about releasing those blocks that are preventing you, that's making you hit your head on that ceiling, so that you believe in yourself and you can proceed without thinking. The next thing you can do is reduce those cognitive biases. So altering that inner dialogue, because the way in which we talk to ourselves impacts the results that we get. So, you know, go from limiting beliefs, limiting inner dialogue, limiting or critical inner dialogue, to backing yourself, become a cheerleader. And if you want to learn how to do that, if you head over, I've got loads of free resources. If you scan the QR code, which is, oh, I'm trying to point to it. I can't point to it. It's on screen, basically. There. Oh, there it is. So there's a QR code on screen, or if you head over to my website, estellereed.com, and you download my free journaling template. That's all to do with you reprogramming your mind, and also, sorry, not reprogramming your mind, but changing your inner dialogue. So you've got an inner captain, an inner cheerleader, as opposed to an inner critic. And then the final thing you can do is to start to use empowering affirmations and repeat those daily, so that you give yourself a pep talk. And again, studies show people that are really successful, they do this. I know it sounds cheesy, but it really does work. And I'll share one with you right now. This is going to make my podcast explicit. So if you don't like swear words, block your ears now. So I'm looking up here because I've got it written on a post-it, and it says, "Why the fuck not?" And this is all about, come on, why not? Come on, you can do it. So write yourself some affirmations. Again, this could be an opportunity to press pause to write those affirmations. So the next thing to counter self-sabotage is to optimize your energy so that you optimize your results so that you don't run out of steam. So my example was, do you remember I said I couldn't even climb the stairs when I had ME, let alone climb mountains? So we have set ourselves the target of bagging Wainwrights. And there's no way I would have been able to do this years ago. And here we are, we have achieved our first Wainwright here. This was Helm Crag. And we even managed to encourage our daughter to come along to one as well. And yeah, so how do we optimize our energy to get better results? So the first one is to plug energy leaks. So this is toxic environments or misaligned commitments. So what I mean by that is, where are you giving away your energy? Who is wasting your energy? What tasks are wasting your energy? So this could be, doom scrolling on the internet. That's a waste of time and energy. Although, I do like I love funny Instagram reels. So I am not perfect by any, expectation. So, but also it's like, sometimes we have those drains, don't we? People that will take our time without asking, and we need to think about how we manage those relationships and how we plug those energy gaps. And then it's about removing energy blocks, because do you know what? When we suppress emotions, we get energetic blocks in our body. So I was saying to a client the other day that when I tense about something, I tense one of my, which side is it? Left. I don't do left and right. I tense my right butt cheek. Now you might think, well, that's a little bit crackers, but then it gives me sciatica. And that's my mind trying to communicate with me that, look, you are feeling tense about something. You need to make a change. So even paying attention to any pain that you get in your body. So another example was when we relocated to the lakes, I got frozen shoulder. I got two, I got two frozen shoulders. And that was because I was bearing the responsibility of the relocation and my family's happiness on my shoulders. I was constantly checking in on my daughter, my husband. Are you okay? Are you happy? Da, da, da. Forgetting about myself. I knew I would be happy because I was achieving this goal, dream, and ambition, but I felt so responsible for them. And my body was telling me that I needed to let this go. And so eventually I did, and my shoulders freed up, and I was absolutely fine. I no longer needed help putting my coat on. But you can also use techniques like EFT, emotional freedom techniques. So again, this is something that I share with delegates on the Optimized Leader Program Next Level. I show you how to self-haven, and I also show you how to use EFT. And then it's thinking about increasing the activities or the things that are going to boost your energy. So things that elevate your mood, what makes you happy? What floats your boat? This is another thing that, I'll push myself out of my comfort zone. Thanks to a podcast guest, Philippa Hardy, if you're listening, she encouraged me to go wild water swimming, and I was a bit apprehensive, but I'm so glad I did it, and the buzz that you get afterwards. So what are the activities that boost your mood? So it could be hobbies, it could be taking care of your well-being. I mentioned, I love to sit under the stars in the hot tub. We play golf, we paddleboard. we ski, horse ride, all that kind of thing. All of those things, they boost my mood and motivation. But the other thing as well is thinking about how you fuel your body. So one of the experiments I did this year is I did the Zoe program. So I had my biome, I analysed, because there are connections between what we eat and our mental health, and looked at ways in which I could optimize what it was that I was eating. So to be fair, for many years since I recovered from ME, I have a very clean diet, or a pretty clean diet. That's not to say that we don't have treats, we do, but there were things that I learned that I needed to tweak. So, for example, we have cereal bars. They are packed with sugar actually. So, and also I learned that my body doesn't process fat very well. So I've got to spread that fat out. So it's thinking about how we fuel our bodies, because again, I remember when I did the research for my first book, I came across a study which was about, trans fats and how, so if the article was entitled, Donuts Make You Angry. So it's to do with, when we put poor fuel in our body, we damage our state of mind, basically. So might be time to press pause, make a note. What are you going to do to optimize your energy and therefore your results? So the next thing, or the next step in the clear process, is to take aligned action. So do you remember me saying I was hesitant to set up my own business? I was afraid of failing. I had to really feel the fear and do it anyway. And I remember my evidence for setting up my own business was that don't laugh, was I was going to buy myself an Audi TT. And here it is. Well, actually, that's my second Audi TT that you can see on screen. But I'd literally been in my business, it must have been 4 months, and I had enough cash to buy my first Audi TT. And that was my evidence for achieving my goal. But over the years, having run my business for 20 years, I've got freedom. I've helped over 15,000 people when I've been working with them. I've got a job I love. I've been able to achieve my personal dreams. I've earned in excess of £1 million through my business. But in order to do that, we have to take aligned action, don't we? We've got to feel the fear and do it anyway. So the next thing, so you've got your goal, you've got your vision. And when I say goal, big, hairy, audacious goal or vision, the next thing is to probe those goals and to identify whether it's really what you want. Is it really what you want to do? Is it aligned with your values, with your beliefs? Or because, when we're misaligned, we're less inclined to do that. And maybe in another podcast episode, what I'll do is I'll talk about how you can test unconsciously. So check in with yourself. But what I would suggest is you sit quietly and you go, really, is this really what I want? And trust the first answer that pops in your head. Then we have to identify those tasks. So you have your goals, that's a big chunk. And then it's important to break that down into specific tasks. So the goal is what you're going to achieve. The task is how you're going to achieve it. And then to reflect on what are those next level identity habits. So remember that identity pyramid. What are the habits that are going to help you achieve that goal? What things do you need to do consistently? And when I've been interviewing my podcast guests, the thing that struck me the most is those that are successful, they consistently do or act in a certain way. And that's all down to our habits and our routines. So identifying what are the habits or routines that you need to stick to. So for me, that's been my publishing routine, and it's affected creating a podcast, doing my social media posts, and doing my blog posts. And it's taken quite a commitment. Right, there's another little bit of interesting scientific research for you. So, the other thing that's going to help you successfully achieve your goals is being held accountable. And this is based on scientific research. I'm going to run through all the activities that will increase your chances of goal attainment. So, the first thing you can do is to identify your goal. So identifying your goals, sitting now and thinking about what it is that you want to achieve. And I'm guessing you're listening to this in the new year, thinking about your New Year's resolution. The bad news is, if you just think about it, you've only got a 10% chance of success. The next thing is to consciously commit to the goal. So let's say plucking something out of the air, you are choosing to have a more healthy diet, let's say. But you just pluck it out of the air and you don't actually think about, well, what's the consequence of that? The consequence of that is that you may be going to have to say goodbye to, I don't know, some of those sweet treats or savory treats or whatever it is. So it's being aware of what are you really committing to. Deciding when you want to achieve that goal by. So setting yourself a deadline. If you do that, you've got a 40% chance of achieving your goal. And by the way, consciously committing to your goal, that increases your chance of goal attainment to 25%. Next, planning how. So can you see how all the steps in the clear process start to knit together? So working out your plan, establishing how you're going to achieve your goal, you would increase your chances by 50%. Committing to someone else increases your chances of success to 65%. Why is it that we'll have a gym buddy, or we go to a weight loss clinic where we have to step on scales? It's being held accountable. Or why is it that people like me earn a living? It's because we hold our clients accountable to the goal that they're wanting to achieve. But the ultimate thing that increases your chances of success is having an accountability appointment. So it increases chances to 95%. So again, it's working out who can you have that appointment with and who can hold you accountable to these goals. We're at the final hurdle, the section of the model entitled Rise. So how do we rise to that next level? So I talked you through our journey of houses. So we started off in this flat at 21,000, then we moved to our first semi-detached house at 59,000, then we went to our detached house at 210,000, and then finally we got to our doll's house, which we bought, incidentally, for 430,000, but then disaster struck. Somebody on our estate that got desperate to move, and their property had not been marketed to sell, so it wasn't attractive. It'd been on the market about 18 months, and they dropped the price until eventually it sold for 370,000. So it affected the prices of the property on our estate. So we damaged our pot also by buying our boat by 80,000. So we recognised we needed to sell the boat. And here's a picture of us. We've just sold the boat. And I've bought my husband a book and it says How to Survive the Lake District. We were really committing to this goal by this stage. And that was my little token to remind ourselves that that's where we were heading. We also had difficulties with our estate agents. Some of the values were all over the place. One guy knocked a ridiculous amount off, and I wanted us to put it on for something like 485. I can't remember. But in the end, we were able to realise 530,000. So that was 100,000 than what we bought it for. But also we bust the ceiling level on that previous property price. Now, what we discovered, do you remember I said we were going all over the place looking for this house? We realised actually we needed more money in the pot. And I had this limiting belief around we'd got to be mortgage free, we'd got to stick to 500,000. When in reality, there's 13 years difference between my husband and I. Whilst he was retired, I'm still earning a living. So why not get the house of our dreams? Expand the budget. So that's what we did. And in the end, we bought this house for 735,000. It ticked all of our boxes, as in it was a new build. We didn't need to do any work for it. It backed onto countryside. It got all the rooms that we needed. We got the space that we needed, because one of our concerns, or my husband's concern, was we would relocate to the Lake District, and he didn't want to live in a dark, damp, pokey, traditional Lakeland cottage. And because I was relocating the family, I thought, right, do you know what? We're going to get the house that he really wants. So to rise to the next level, here are your final action steps. So number one, it's learning to grow from failure. So we failed along the way. We bought the boat. We had an amazing time with it. We recognized the error of our ways. We had to sell the boat in order to move faster. And yeah, so we learned from that failure. It's then reflecting. So, when we looked at the identity pyramid, it's going, right, what am I learning here? What are the habits, the behaviors that I need to change? How do I need to realign to my values? What beliefs do I need to change so that I can rise to the next level? And sometimes it is a case of feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And then the next thing is to recognize your progress. So, do you know what? I celebrate every new follower I get on my podcast, and I'm so grateful. It's just a sign of progress and a sign that I'm rising towards that goal, dream, and ambition. So even the small rises, even the small changes that you make sure you give yourself a pat on the back, because do you know what? That's self-perpetuating. And the more that we recognize, so there's that famous saying, we get more of whatever we focus on. So focus on those great achievements and focus on those changes that you're making. And then finally, to rise to the next level, make sure that you find your community of cheerleaders to maintain that momentum, accountability, and motivation. And whether it's a group of people or whether you find yourself a coach that will hold you accountable and you've got that appointment so that you consistently work towards your goals. So to bring things to a close, you've got now the formula for achieving your goals. So first of all, we have to get clear on our self-sabotage patterns, the beliefs, the states of mind, the things that are stopping us from achieving our goal. Next, we have to get clear on what our goal, dream, ambition, or vision is. Next, we have to let go of the limiting beliefs, behaviors, the emotions, those things that threaten our identity by using techniques that I've explained, or reprogramming your unconscious mind by using affirmations, journaling, that type of thing. Then the E stands for Energize, to maintain that energy during your goal attainment so that you can work relentlessly towards that goal, dream, or ambition. And that means plugging those energy blocks and fueling your body with those healthy things that enable you to work consistently towards your goals. The A stands for take aligned action. Aligned action means actions that are aligned with your vision and actions that are aligned with your values. Because do you know what? The minute we outstep or we move away from what's important to us, our motivation dives or takes a nosedive. And then R is about rising to the next level. So it's making sure that you are consistently recognizing, reviewing your progress, acknowledging it. So you do more of all the things that are working, but also you learn and you grow from that failure, and don't be afraid of failure. But also it's about consistently carrying out those habits and behaviors. So I hope that's been really helpful. As I say, if you want to work with me on the Optimized Leader program, so that you too can rise to the next level, I deliver this program either on a one-to-one, or if you want me to deliver it in-house for groups, for a team of leaders, I'd love to hear from you. You can book a no obligation 15-minute free discovery call either on the QR code you can see on screen, or if you head over to my website, which is Estelle Reid, Reid is spelled R-E-A-D as in read a book, estellereid.com. I'd love to hear from you. So I want to wish you the most magical 2026. I hope you realise your goals, dreams, ambitions. I hope you feel fabulous about yourself, because do you know what? When we feel good, we do good. We achieve great things. So thanks again for following along and listening, and wishing you all the very best for your 2026. Signing off. If you'd like to be notified when the next episode drops, remember to subscribe. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit. Finally, if any of these topics have sparked your interest and you'd like to work with me, you can apply for a free discovery call at estellereid.com. Let's see if we're a good fit. You'll also find plenty of free resources there. I'm Estelle Reid, executive coach, speaker and best-selling author, and this has been the Optimising Your Brilliance podcast. Thanks for listening. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for any specific advice related to your situation.